Welcome back to Axis Anime. My name is Henshin Ikeda. Today I'll be doing a walkthrough review of One Piece episode 589. Now, if you remember from last episode, we see Luffy's group run into Law, and then we see Law use Shamble on both Smoker and Tashigi. So if you thought Smoker was dead after Law ripped out his heart, you are mistaken. Smoker, he is still alive, and now that Law has used Shambles, Smoker is now in Tashigi's body, and Tashigi is now in Smoker's body. I love the twist. And then is it just me, or does Tashigi, since Smoker is now in Tashigi's body, look like Tashigi's body now has bigger breasts? That must just be me, but I noticed that Tashigi looks a lot more hotter, even though it's Smoker that's now in her body. I'm just noticing she's got more cleavage, or at least you can see more. I'm like, definitely thought that was worth mentioning, even though it was kind of small and insignificant, but I had to bring that up. But moving on past that, we find out Law is telling Luffy they'll see each other again, and then Law directs Luffy to where Nami's group is located. And I'm wondering, why did he do that? I mean, I thought he was the villain, he's a warlord, but you know what? I'm thinking Law is a good guy. He's just playing the villain, so he can dig himself in deeper into the celestial dragons and whatnot. What have you. So I think Law is just playing the part of the villain, but he's actually a good guy. But just putting that out there, that's my theory. But moving on past that, once Luffy's group catches up with Nami's group, we see the severed head. He reconnects his legs onto his body from Luffy's group. So Luffy's group, which had the legs which belonged to the samurai, have now connected back on to the severed head from Nami's group. And we find out this severed head slash legs, which is a samurai, he's a devil fruit user. And again, we still do not know what his name is, but he's a devil fruit user, and you're wondering, is Luffy going to ask the samurai to join his group once he gets his torso back? Maybe, but I doubt this guy's going to join the pirates. I don't think this severed head slash legs is going to join the Straw Hat crew. That's just my opinion. But moving on past that, toward the end of the episode, we find out what the initials CC stands for. Now, if you remember correctly, Brownbeard had a snail communicator with the initials CC. Now, CC stands for Caesar Clown, which is the villain of Punk Hazard. And again, that's where the episode ends, and I'll have my final thought and rating at the end of the clip, so stay tuned. But let's dive right on in. So we open up this episode with Smoker and Tashigi. And apparently, Tashigi, which is in Smoker's body, is telling Smoker and the rest of G5 that's currently on the island that those children they saw with the Straw Hats were abducted, but not by the Straw Hats, of course. Although they could make that assumption, but they're not. But Tashigi does point out these kids that they saw with the Straw Hats were abducted. And if they were abducted, then the abductors must still be on the island. Now, Smoker believes that someone within the Navy is covering up these abductions as well as what's happening on Punk Hazard Island in general. And he believes whoever is covering up this information is probably with G5 or is someone close in rank. So they have to be up on the food chain to be able to hide this kind of cover-up. But again, that's where we open up with. Moving on past that, we are taken to a little cutscene in the third laboratory. Yeah, the third lab. Apparently Joker is getting the heads up from his master about taking out the Straw Hats. So Joker is going to be fighting the Straw Hat crew, regardless of what's currently happening. Or at least that's what we are told. I don't know when it's going to happen, and I can't wait to find out. But we also find out Monet, that little freakish, whatever you want to call her, harpy, there you go, I'm going to call her Harpy. Monet, the harpy, is now telling her master, Caesar Clown, how much the Straw Hat crew are worth, how many berries. Luffy being worth 400,000 berries and whatnot. And then she points out, although it's been 2 years, the amount of bounty that's on the Straw Hat crew have remained the same. They haven't, gone up because of the 2 years, because they've been frozen. So that was kind of interesting. She also points out to Caesar Clown that although it's been 2 years, the Straw Hat crew are probably a lot stronger. She's thinking like Robin right now. She's got the Robin glow, if that makes any sense. But again, moving on past that, we find out a little more information from Brownbeard. Apparently Brownbeard was working for Caesar Clown, if that wasn't already obvious. So Brownbeard points out he was in fact working for Caesar Clown. That's who his master is. So I thought that was definitely worth mentioning. And apparently we are taken to a little cutscene with one of Brownbeard's crew member, which were defeated by, the Straw Hats. So one of Brownbeard's crew members approaches Caesar Clown at the laboratory and is asking for help because he's partly dead. And Caesar Clown does help one of Brownbeard's crew members, but he's using him as a guinea pig. This is where we get to see the true side of Caesar Clown show, because we see the dark side of Caesar Clown. He's using this poor defenseless crew member that belongs to Brownbeard as a guinea pig. Says he's going to help him, step into this room, we'll heal you up. No, not at all. He's using him as a guinea pig. Now, we also find out Usopp, he's making identification badges for everyone that was hit by Law's shambles attack. So, this again, Usopp, he's making ID badges for everyone that's in different bodies. So again, Nami is in Frankie's body, and Sanji is in Nami's body, and so on and so forth. Frankie is in Chopper's body, and again, so on and so forth. And now Usopp places identification badges with pictures on who's in what body. And I'm like, okay, at least we get to see Usopp in this episode. He does something. There you go. I'm not an Usopp fan, and I never will be. I don't like Usopp. But we are taking to a little cutscene with Brownbeard, and he's updating Luffy on what his generation is up to, if that makes any sense. So this is Brownbeard. He's telling Luffy what the supernovas are up to. Yeah, apparently Luffy's generation is called the worst generation because they're all badasses, if that makes any sense. Now again, 2 years ago, the supernovas were everyone that was worth a certain amount of berries in the New World, such as Zoro, Law, Luffy in general. They were badasses worth a lot of money. Those were considered the supernovas, Hawkins. I'm like, okay, so again, this is Brownbeard. He's updating Luffy on where the supernovas are at. And then we're also throwing a little curveball about Hawkins. Yeah, this is Brownbeard. He's telling Luffy and everyone else part of the Straw Hats about Hawkins. Apparently, Hawkins was responsible for shattering Brownbeard's crew. So Hawkins basically breaks up Brownbeard's crew, and is responsible for taking out Brownbeard's legs. So Hawkins is responsible for defeating Brownbeard and taking out his legs? Really? I didn't know that. I mean, I don't remember reading that in the manga, but okay. So Hawkins is responsible for screwing over Brownbeard and his crew. And again, Brownbeard explains that the island they're currently on is called the Treasure House of Life. I'm like, wait a minute, isn't the island they're currently on called Punk Hazard? I didn't understand that. But again, Brownbeard is telling Luffy the island they're currently on is called the Treasure House of Life. Definitely worth mentioning, and I had to say that before I forget, of course. Now we are taking to a little cutscene on the island. Yeah, they're talking about the island. Brownbeard in general is talking about the island. Apparently a few years back, the Navy controlled the island they're currently on, which is called Punk Hazard, and the Navy was experimenting on prisoners. So the Navy was using this island to experiment on prisoners in general, as guinea pigs. So nothing has really changed, except presently in the anime series the island is being controlled by a different group that's not the Navy. But again, in the past, a few years back, the island known as Punk Hazard was being controlled by the Navy, and they were experimenting on prisoners, and they were using the prisoners as guinea pigs. And apparently there was a big explosion in one of the laboratories. Now, speaking of the explosion that was in one of the laboratories, we find out the Straw Hat crew is currently at the remains of this laboratory that was destroyed. Definitely worth mentioning, so we get to see the remains of the laboratory that was destroyed. Now, moving on past that, we find out this explosion that happened a few years back messed up the island so bad that the weather was all screwed up, and there was appeared to be a gas leak of some sort. I know, the Navy, they got the hell out of Dodge. So a few years ago, after the island went to shit, let me say that again. When the island went to hell, the Navy that was currently occupying Punk Hazard, they got the hell out of Dodge, and they left the prisoners on the island to defend for themselves. So this is not really looking good for the Navy. Now, apparently 1 year later, Brownbeard's master, known as Caesar Clown, he purified the island of the gas that was on the island. So now the island was livable with his ability. So apparently Caesar Clown is a devil fruit user. He can use some type of random ability, which we still don't know what it is, of course, in the anime series. And apparently he helps out the prisoners. So Caesar Clown, he helps out all the prisoners that are currently on the island. And these prisoners now join Caesar Clown and become part of his crew. So I thought that was definitely worth mentioning. Now, Brownbeard, he came to the island about half a year ago. Or half a year later, I should say. So Brownbeard eventually comes to the island about half a year later, and he only has half of a body, because if you remember correctly, Hawkins shattered Brownbeard's legs, and eventually Caesar Clown helps Brownbeard's crew as well, whatever's left of Brownbeard's crew, of course, and Brownbeard in general. I definitely thought that was worth mentioning. However, Law, Yeah, a few months ago, Law shows up on the island, and he uses his abilities to help out all these other prisoners that are on the island, and he uses his magical, devil fruit power to give them legs. He switches off their shattered legs with animal legs, which is how I guess Brownbeard became half human, half alligator or whatnot, and all the other pirates became centaurs and whatnot. So I guess Law definitely was there to help, but for good reason. He's a doctor, so I guess his ethics came into play there. Now, moving on past that, we're taking to a little cutscene with Caesar Clown, and he's using one of his, I don't know how to describe this. He's torturing the one of Brownbeard's crew members. I definitely thought that was worth mentioning. It was crazy. I'm like, oh my god, he's still torturing this poor guy in his little cell. So we get to see the true side of Caesar Clown yet again, and he's using one of his injured allies, which are one of Brownbeard's crew members, as a guinea pig. So it's no shocker there, and he's slowly dying. And this is not what we want to see. I mean, no, I don't want to see this. This is just another relapse of what we saw at the beginning of the episode. So, who the fuck cares? Now, we are taking to a little cutscene with Smoker, and he's telling his men about Caesar Clown and how Caesar Clown was responsible for the explosion. So remember that explosion that happened a few years ago? It's because of Caesar Clown. And speaking of Caesar Clown, guess what? Caesar Clown used to be part, not of the Navy. I'm not sure if he was really part of the Navy, but he used to be part of Vegapunk, Dr. Vegapunk's group. Yeah, apparently Caesar Clown was second in command of the laboratories on the island, and he worked right underneath, well, Vegapunk. Like, really? So technically, in retrospect, Caesar Clown used to work for the Navy. If you follow me, of course. And that's kind of weird. But again, Caesar Clown, he was responsible for the explosion. I know, that was... wow. And that's why he has a bounty on his head, of course. Now, moving on past that, we are thrown with a little bit of information about Caesar Clown. I called him Caesar Clone. I'm sorry. Although, that would be a funny name. CC does work out in that way, of course. But again, I'll throw out this little bit of information. If I didn't already say this, Caesar Clown, he was second in command of the science department on this island. And he was right underneath Dr. Vegapunch. And again, that's where the episode ends. As per my final thoughts. Okay, well, first of all, what are Caesar Clown's main objectives right now? What is he trying to do with this this gas he has? Like, what is he trying to create with experimenting on all these allies he has, and with the pirates? What is his true objective? We really don't know. But moving on past this, is Smoker and Tashigi ever going to get their bodies back, and is Smoker going to get his heart back? We really don't know. As for Luffy's group and Nami's group, now that they're together, what's their next objective? Is it going to be to get the severed head / legs torso back? The samurai's body back? We really don't know. And who is the samurai's son? We really don't know that either. And as for Brownbeard, is Brownbeard ever going to learn the truth about Caesar Clown screwing him, taking out one of his crew members? We really don't know. I can't wait to find out about that. And one more final thought. Law, what side are you on? I believe, this is my theory, I believe Law is playing the role of the villain in order to get himself deeper inside the Navy and whatnot. I believe he is still a good guy. I believe he is going to be friends with Luffy in the future, and I believe it's going to go somewhere. But again, that's my theory, and that ends it for my final thought. As per my rating, 3.5 out of 5 for this episode. I wasn't really thrilled because there was really no fighting. I mean, Smoker versus Law ended, and that was done, so the main hype from last episode was finished. Was there any romance and drama? God, no. Was there any information? Yes. We know more about Caesar Clown, the villain, so that was definitely there. But again, there was no fight scene, so I really was not impressed with this episode. The only thing that impressed me about this episode was the information. But again, final rating, 3.5 out of 5. And that ends it for my walkthrough and review of One Piece episode 589. Definitely comment down below. Let me know, thumbs up, thumbs down. Definitely subscribe. Check me out on Twitter and follow me if you like. But let me know what you thought of this episode, and let me know what things that happen in the next episode that's coming out. But again, guys, that ends it for now. And I gotta hit the bricks, and I gotta go. And before I go, I gotta say it, and I always say it. You can't stop the access, but you can watch the feed. I'll see you later, guys.